Hi everyone, my name is Vlad and today we're going to talk about macro lens as I've received this Pergear 60mm f2.8 macro with 2 times magnification. Just a small disclaimer, I received this lens for a review, but I was not asked to say any particular about this lens. So everything you're gonna hear is my thoughts based on my experience with this lens, and it's completely unbiased. And as always, I have video and image samples so you can judge by yourself. I always wanted to have a dedicated macro lens as I would often find myself limited with a minimal focusing distance as well as magnification, especially when I would shoot product photos and videos. I've tried macro rings, but they're less convenient as you have to turn off the camera and physically to add or remove them in order to reach needed magnification or the framing. Also on some lenses they would introduce unwanted side effects like really blurry corners. So dedicated macro lens was always on my wish list and I finally got one, and not just a macro lens but the one with a 2 times magnification. As I've said, this is Pergear 60mm f2.8. The lens arrived in a simple box with a nice layer of padding inside of it for safe transportation. It is built out of metal and including the mount. Mine is a fixed mount, so it's for Fujifilm. It is also available for some other camera systems. I will list them somewhere on the screen. Overall build quality is really nice and all the markings and logo is printed out on the lens and it's well readable and seems like it will last for a while. Out of the box, focusing ring and aperture ring, they've been way too stiff, but with some time it's become easier to turn them and they're really smooth. But regarding the aperture, it's still a bit tight, but as this aperture is clickless, it actually can be a good idea to have it a bit stiffer than needed, so you won't change settings by accident. The front element of this lens seems to be just protective glass, and it needed to prevent all the dust coming inside as well as protect from elements if you are shooting outside, for example. This lens has a really interesting design, at least from my point of view, as you have a lens moving inside of this barrel to increase distance from a sensor. It's similar how you would work with extension rings for macro, but it's much more convenient. It might be not entirely correct, but at least it's how it appears to me. I'm not entirely sure if other macro lenses work like this, but it's apparent on this lens, and that is just an interesting note on the design. Also, this lens is relatively big and heavy, at least for APS-C sensor, but on the other hand it is lighter and smaller than Fujifilm XF80mm. Something that you need to keep in mind that this lens loses light with a closer focusing distance or higher magnification. That is probably due to increasing distance between the lens moving inside of this barrel and the camera sensor. I've looked it up online and it seems like other lenses do more or less the same thing. For example, Laowa 100mm, which has the same 2 times magnification ratio. So yeah, it seems to be quite normal for this kind of design. Focus throw on this lens is something like 170 degrees, and you need to keep in mind that most of it is dedicated for macro work, and if you want to use it for normal use, and for example if you want to use it for something between 1 meter and infinity, you literally have a few millimeters to work for, maybe 4 or 5 millimeters to work with. Another thing that I've noticed that with this lens you can go way past infinity, and that is probably due to the design of this lens, and maybe it's one of the sacrifices designers had to go with, but yeah, keep that in mind as well. But shooting macro with this lens is really fun because 2:1 magnification ratio or 2 times magnification, it allows you to see that you usually wouldn't notice. And as usual with macro lenses and with lenses in general, the closer you're to a subject, the smaller depth of field is, and to compensate it, you will have to close down your aperture. which of course requires more light and nothing really can do about it because that is laws of physics. And most of the images that I took were between f4 and f11 to find the balance between the best quality and the best depth of field. Front element easily gathers some dust or dirt, and on a closed down aperture you can easily see these spots on a final image. The sharpest aperture range on this lens is between f5.6 and f8, and f4 and f11 they are also perfectly usable, just a little bit softer, which can't really be said about f2.8 because it is even more softer, as well as it having some ghosting effect on it. And at f16 light diffraction is quite strong, so image is soft, which is still pretty good because shooting macro you'll have to compensate for depth of field and you'll have to step it down anyway. I haven't noticed any chromatic aberrations even wide open at f2.8. But I have to point out that I'm testing all my lenses on a Fujifilm, and sometimes I hear the feedback or looking at other video reviews, and I've noticed that same lenses do not behave exactly the same on other camera systems. So maybe Fujifilm actually handles chromatic aberration a bit better, but as far as I can see, these lenses handle them pretty well on the Fujifilm cameras. Feel free to comment if you've noticed something similar. I wouldn't expect much distortion from a 60mm lens. There could be concussion distortion in theory, but I haven't noticed in real life examples, so I'm not really bothered by it. Vignetting control on this one is pretty good because even at f2.8 you can barely see it, and it gets even better at f4. In some occasions front element can cause the flare and lose of contrast. As a conclusion, for the price $199 or British pounds, you can't really beat it for 2x magnification macro lens. At least I haven't seen any alternatives in this price range. If you're interested in macro photography and looking for a good affordable lens, this one is a really solid choice because it provides you 2x magnification, so it offers you some flexibility in these terms, as well as good image quality. So I can definitely recommend this lens for that. And if you're looking for more like all-rounder lens, which can be used in many different scenarios, this one is probably not for you, because it is soft at 2.8, as well as it is relatively heavy and big, and the focusing for a normal use is a bit fiddly. It would obviously be a good choice for a standard macro photography, but also it would probably shine as a product photography as well, especially if the subject is quite small. Here is some image samples which I took with this lens between f4 and f8, everything handheld. All the images exported from Lightroom, from RAW, without any editing. Shooting with this lens handheld wasn't easy because of the long focal length. This lens is 90mm full frame equivalent. If I'm using on my Fujifilm camera on a micro four thirds would be 120mm. So it is quite long lens, and to keep it stable on a close focusing distance is quite difficult. And with a small depth of field it becomes even less possible. That's it, thank you for watching, I hope it was helpful, so please like and subscribe, and also you can check my blog and Instagram, links are in description. Thank you, see you next time.